The life story of Yvette Arlene Gibler, also known as Mimi. Julia Farr Draper met Arnold Dahlheim at their local church in Silvis, Illinois, where she played piano. The two fell in love, married, and started a family. The beautiful Yvette Arlene Dahlheim was brought into the world on April 30th, 1943, in the town of Moline, Illinois. Yvette's mom had worked at a state hospital while Dad worked at a local factory for the first 2 years of her life before they decided they wanted some farmland and rented a humble farm outside of town. Julia and Arnold had their second little girl named Suzette, but Jesus took her home when she was less than 1 hour old. As time went on, it wasn't long before Yvette caught German measles and began to develop severe allergies and asthma, causing the family to move somewhere drier. About 30 miles north of the Tri-Cities, outside of Cordova, the Dahlheims bought a small sandy farm which was more suitable for Yvette's health. It was a small home with no modern features, but this is where she would spend the next few years of her life. She remembers pumping water from the well to bring it inside, but in the winter it was so cold even the water inside the house would freeze. Yvette started school in a one-room schoolhouse with about 15 other children, and her favorite teacher, Mrs. Arlie Ann Wainwright. She enjoyed learning and did well in her studies. Her teachers many times complimented her sweet nature and artistic abilities. She was known to sketch and color many horses, which were her favorite animal. Occasionally, she would even cut part of the horse's mane to glue to her picture in order to capture her audiences all the more. At 9 years old, Julia and Arnold were able to have their third little girl, Brenda. She was born premature, less than 2 pounds with many health problems, but Yvette loved her sister. These years were hard, and the farm life was rough. The sand would constantly destroy the crops, so they tried milking cows, raising chickens, but nothing seemed to stick. Some friends of Julia and Arnold had moved to Cairo, Missouri. There, the land was cheaper, so they started looking at other opportunities. Soon, they found the opportunity just a few miles outside of Hlgu, Missouri, where they decided to rent a house and some farmland. There, they moved just before Yvette went into 5th grade. Yvette started school at Hlgu in a consolidated school system. She remembers feeling very nervous about the change, but she enjoyed living life on the farm with all of her animals. She could always be found around multiple different types of animals: dogs, pigs, cows, horses. Her sophomore year, as Yvette was going through school, is when she set her eyes on Mr. Frederick Rowe Gibler, the Navy veteran, son of a preacher's daughter. When she first saw him, he was riding a bucking bronco. She says that she will never forget that day. Later on a trail ride, she worked up the courage to ask Fred to help her train her horse, Princey's sister. They rode together to get the horse when Fred asked Yvette to go get some mushmelon at a friend's house. This was the beginning of a year-long courtship where they frequented the drive-in theater, square dancing in town, and riding horses in the saddle club. By New Year's, Fred had mail-ordered an engagement ring, and they decided to get married at the Hlgu Christian Church on her last day of junior year of high school, with 2 cows and 1 horse as her prized dowry. She started her senior year as the only married woman in her class, driving herself to school in their pickup truck, proud to be Mrs. Yvette Gibler. She was even able to wear her wedding dress to homecoming. By May, Yvette had graduated high school and was pregnant with her first son. Life was spent supporting her husband, raising her children. Less than 2 years later, Kit was born, and just 2 years after that, along came Velvet. They lived in different houses while Fred spent his time doing telegraphy for the railroad, selling insurance, welding, and many more other projects. 2 days after Christmas of '67, Yvette's dad passed away due to complications regarding lung cancer. Her mom began working all the more to cover the farm payments, taking in foster children, working at the hospital as a licensed nurse, and more. One day, at a revival session, In a neighboring town of Roanoke, Yvette walked the aisle, seeing her need for a savior, and less than 1 month after that, Fred got saved at the local church in Yates, Missouri, where they faithfully attended until they moved to Warrensburg after his brother had told him about the possibility of hauling trash. Around this time came their youngest daughter, April. She would complete the family as Yvette faithfully raised her children and supported her husband throughout these years. From living on 16 acres to Mount Zion Church and everywhere in between, they were faithful churchgoers, raising their children to be hard workers and love the Lord. Cody, Kit, Velvet, and April began to grow up, graduate high school, stepped out in their own callings, and grew their own families. Shortly later, Fred and Yvette moved back to the family farm in Hlgu, Missouri, naming it Full Circle Farm. During this time, Fred continued working as a self-taught electrician, renting and flipping houses, working in factories, buying and selling many animals from goats, ostriches, emus, rheas, and so many more. They had many grandchildren to their legacy by this point, creating many memories on the family farm with these kids who knew them as Mimi and Papa. By the year 2000, great-grandma Julia passed away and Mimi and Papa bought the farm where most of the family lived at some point or another. Mimi and Papa remained faithful churchgoers, hard workers, and served in many capacities. Mimi supported Papa through retirement, where he became the Columbia Mall Santa Claus for many years until his health prevented him from continuing. In 2014, Papa went to be with Jesus earlier than many of us wanted. It was a hard transition as Mimi had lost her husband of over 54 years, but she continued living as a faithful follower of Christ, a hard worker at her and Velvet's flower shops, and the mom and Mimi of the century. She watched as her great-grandchildren kept entering the world, and to this day, her legacy continues to build as she impacts the lives of so many friends, families, and strangers around her. What a beautiful life Yvette Arlene Gibler is continuing to live in this world.